All right, so we're still on our tree surveying journey in the mountains of the eastern United States. And we finished up in the last episode comparing some parts to a whole, is how we phrased it. And that was when we were looking at data and comparing each number to the entire amount. So in that case, pie charts were helpful, but now we're going to move on. We'll go over to the right-hand side here. And the first piece of data that we're going to look at is we're comparing a series of numbers just to each other, not to the entire amount. So a pie chart is not what we're looking for anymore. We're going to highlight this and we'll go to Insert Chart. We'll pull this down here. And the three types of charts that are going to be best for this kind of comparison are the column chart, the bar chart, which is just a column chart turned on its side, or the line chart. So we'll get into the line chart in a minute when we come down to this next table. But for now, let's do the column chart. Left click on that. And then it's mostly done for us. So I'll make this a little bit larger. We'll make a few little tweaks here. The one thing is meters versus species is a horrible name. This is just tree height, right? So let's just change this. We'll double click on that, type in tree height. If you want to do any other customization, let's say that should be centered, right? You just have the selections right here. We'll make it a little bit larger. Okay, and let's do one more thing to make it look cool. The chart style will make it 3D, so these columns will pop a little bit. Ooh, there we go. All right, so seeing that this is the same presentation where you just talked to people about the composition of these trees, and now you're talking to them about the relative heights, the colors should be the same, but we're not quite there yet. So this is for the whole series. So if we change the color here, it would change all of them, right? So let's go back, put that back on auto. What we want to do is format the data point. So we'll double left click on this, make sure that oak is selected, and that brought up format data point. If it doesn't come up at first, just make sure you double click on the specific one that you want, and we'll change this one to red. The maples were orange, and the sycamores were green. And being able to compare charts is very important. So now when you come and you look at these heights, you can easily see that on the west facing slope, most of the trees are sycamores, and those are about a medium height when compared to these other four. All right, so that's a bar chart. Pretty straightforward. Let's put it back to 3D though. That looked better. There we go. All right, so your bar chart is done. We're going to move that out of the way and then talk about a little bit more complicated chart. As a matter of fact, I'm going to delete this chart. We're going to talk about a little bit more of a complicated scenario here where we had the height, but then we added in another series of data points for the circumference of the trees. And we want to see how these two series of data relate to each other. So we'll be displaying more information here on the same chart. So you have to be very careful that things don't get cluttered because that can happen quickly. So we'll select this table of data and we'll do something a little bit different. We'll go left click the Explore button, let Google Sheets do some of the thinking for us. I'm going to left click on that. It has already suggested some types of charts. Since we already did a column chart, we'll come down and work on this line chart. So all you need to do is left click on it and drag it into your sheet. All right, so we will close the Explore button. And it has made life easier for us. It's made a pretty workable chart for us. We'll make it larger. But we have a problem here, and let's talk about that, is that these are useful numbers, right? And they do show a comparison between themselves. But when you put them on the chart with the same axis as the height, it looks like they're all almost the same. So what we want to do is put each of these on their own axis, but the same chart, so that you can really see the fluctuation in the circumference. So let's double left click on this to bring up the chart editor. I'm going to maximize this window to give us a little bit of space. And we want to edit the series. And down under axis, you have left axis, which would be this vertical axis is the only one on there right now. But let's drop this down and look at a right axis. And in the series, instead of applying to all series, let's just apply this to circumference. All right, so let's remember this is the one that we want to change the axis. And let's make this the right axis. So now that you're dealing with just circumference and you've said right axis, it's given it its own scale. And it knew that 10 was the maximum number, so it made that the maximum point. But let's do one more thing now that we're in here. The circumferences only go down to 8. You have all this room in this chart, but this red line doesn't really move that much. It's all at the top. Let's go to the vertical axis. And when it just says vertical axis, you have to assume it's talking about the first one. So let's first change the height. So the minimum height is 62, so we'll make the minimum 50. Leave the maximum where it is. And you already get a lot more movement in the blue line showing the height. The circumference we need to stretch out to, so we'll go to the right vertical axis, expand that, and make that minimum value 7. Because it starts at 8, I don't want it touching the bottom. So you've stretched out that scale as well. All right, so when you come back and look at the chart, you see now a clear correlation between these two. They tend to move in tandem, right? So as a tree gets taller, it needs to get thicker. But maybe the maple doesn't need to get quite as big around to support its height. Maybe this is made up data though, so who really knows? All right, and in this next video, if you come back and you repeat these measurements year after year, you start developing a time series. So we'll look at how to chart data over time. Thanks for watching this video. It's nice to have you along.